Mitchell,
Here.
Whalen, Goldwish,
Here.
Ash.
Here.
And we would like to make an approval or have an approval of the agenda. Do we have a,
I so
Motion?
move.
I will second. Fantastic. We would like to have minute. Oh, sure. Do it, yeah. We would like, okay, roll
All
call.
in favor.
All in favor?
Whalen,
Aye. Thank you, Charlie. Here.
Ash.
Here. All right, that's me.
Echo. Goes me, sorry.
Okay. We'd like to have a motion to approve minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Quickly.
And all.
Yeah, just do it. Yep.
So we have new business to consider request from Josiah Robinson for a variance to driveway paving standards to permit a gravel driveway at 1003 South First Street. Report.
Yep, so this is a variance request to allow for a gravel driveway at 1003 South First Street from Josiah Robinson in the audience. So this variance if approved would allow for a gravel driveway. Current and code requirements require for a hard surface for driveways. So this is an overview. This is an overview of the property in question. So it's lot 2 of the Robinson subdivision. This was recently subdivided late last year, and it's highlighted in blue. It's difficult to see, but it's this general area that I'm highlighting. The gravel driveway would be up to a new single family dwelling that's currently in construction, so it doesn't have CO on it yet. That's located here. Chapter 16507 regulates off-street parking. This includes access drives and driveways within the city of Indianola. The code section reads that all driveways, access drives, and off-street parking and loading areas shall be covered with either a hot mix asphalt, Portland cement concrete, or pavers. This code section, as it's written, does not allow for or permit the use of gravel as a surface for a driveway access or any off-street parking. There are 4 findings of fact which must be found favorably by the Board of Adjustment in order to approve of this variance. The first asks whether special conditions or circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land that are not applicable to other like zoned properties. In reviewing this site, the subject property is a standard interior lot with frontage along South First Street, a public gravel roadway. In review, while it is unique for a residential property to front along a gravel street within a city, this condition itself does not impede the property owner from providing a paved driveway. So as a result, for this first finding of fact, staff couldn't find that the criteria could be met. The second finding of fact asks if a right would be deprived of the property owner that is commonly enjoyed by other properties. A gravel driveway is not a right permitted to other residential properties within the R2 zoning district and other residential properties as well. Every residential property is required to provide an appropriately paved driveway surface. The code does not provide for any exceptions from the requirement based off of the surfacing of the abutting public or private street. Non-conforming but legal driveways are permitted when they pre-exist current day zoning code requirements. So for properties that contain legal non-conforming driveways, we do have minimum maintenance requirements in order for that property to continue having a gravel driveway. When a property owner fails to meet those maintenance requirements, those drives must be removed or brought up to code requirements. Likewise, these property owners by code would not be able to expand their gravel driveway with additional gravel surfacing. So if they were wanting to expand their driveway to allow for an additional car to be parked, that additional pavement area would need to be an appropriate pavement material. The third finding of fact asks whether conditions or hardships experienced by the applicant are self-imposed. The need for the variance in this case is due to the applicant's desire or preference of having and utilizing a gravel driveway. In initial conversations with the applicant prior to submitting a variance request, the applicant did indicate to staff that during the construction of the new single-family dwelling, that in order to cut costs, they would install a gravel driveway rather than a paved hard surface driveway. Because the applicant has presented this case due to cost-related reasons out of preference, staff couldn't find that this finding of fact would be favorable. So this criteria could not be met. The fourth and last finding of fact asks if a special privilege would be granted to the applicant, and this is that would otherwise be denied to other land structures or buildings within the same zoning district. When variances are granted, a property owner would be experiencing a hardship that would disenfranchise them from a common right that other property owners have. In this case, if the variance was denied, the property owner would not be disenfranchised, as having a gravel driveway is not a right that residential properties have. And for the following reasons. First, other residential properties, regardless of the paving of the abutting private or public street, are not allowed to utilize gravel for surfacing. These surfacing requirements are implemented and enforced to prevent adverse impacts. So that could be from dust, erosion control, public safety access, and then aesthetic issues as well. Secondly, as previously reiterated, properties that do have gravel driveways which pre-exist current code requirements are not allowed to expand upon its nonconformity. This means that if, again, that gravel driveway were to expand to allow for one more car, it wouldn't be able to due to current code requirements. And then lastly, if that same property owner that does have a pre-existing gravel driveway were to maintain that gravel driveway, it would need to be brought back up to code. Lastly, and important to note, the findings of fact established in the code do not explicitly state that, or do explicitly state that non-conforming uses, whether they're in the same zoning district, are not to be used as grounds for approving of a variance. All to say that this finding of fact, staff couldn't find that this would be met either. So points to consider are summarized in the staff report, but that includes that the variance request would not be favorable towards one or more of the findings of fact, that granting the variance would provide a right or privilege that other properties do not have, that the variance is created by the regulations and arises from an action or a desire of the applicant to construct and utilize a gravel driveway, and that financial considerations are preferential to the property owner and cannot be basis for granting. And then neighboring properties with non-conforming but legal gravel drives can't be a basis for granting a variance request, that the substandard surfacing may result in adverse impacts. Frontage along a gravel public or private street does not impede the property owner from providing a hard surface driveway, and that an unnecessary hardship would not exist if the request was denied. They could still make reasonable and economically viable use of the property. So for this reason, for those reasons, city staff is recommending denial of the variance request. Just to note, if the Board of Adjustment were to recommend or to approve of the request, we would just need for each findings of fact, an explanation for each of the findings of fact as to why those could be met.
Thank you, Emily. Any questions for Emily at this time?
No.
Would you like to speak tonight on your behalf?
Well, she summed it up for the most part. So kind of what happened. Get-go of the start of construction and the bank, I couldn't get funding. House that I wanted to build, so I had to. So one of the costs that I cut was getting rid of the whole basement. Just a slab home, and the exterior concrete was another thing. So, and in doing that, I think with Tim, there was talks up front. Originally, I was planning to have that concrete there. And so if I remember correctly, it was probably just a passing question that's made, which was, are you planning to have a concrete driveway? And at that time, you had said yes. And then when we couldn't get funds from the bank, then we had to restructure things. And then, so yeah, on the last inspection, he was like, oh, by the way, you have to have a concrete driveway. And we had already poured all the gravel and completed. So, yeah, basically my biggest points was it's on a gravel road. And part of the aesthetic look that I was going for in buying this particular property was it's very country vibe inside the city. And so I didn't think that it would be a problem to have a gravel driveway again. That's bad on my part, not realizing that that was a requirement. So I understand that, but gravel driveway looks excellent in my opinion. It was laid really well, and being that it's on a gravel road and all the other driveways on that road are gravel, I just it didn't cross my mind that it would need to be paved. So that's really why I'm applying for the variance. So.
Any questions for? Kind of between a rock and a hard place, right? Literally.
Yeah, I appreciate you owning it.
Right,
And it is empathize.
definitely.
There, but with all of the, just going through the summary of findings, I'm not sure personally, and I don't know if the board feels the same, what hardships we could, what arguments we could make to grant the variance.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
With the others being grandfathered in, it's just a difficult situation. My goodness. So.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
And because if we want to take public comment and just have him.
Okay, you come up to the podium and state your name.
Will Robbins. I own the lot just north of France. I was just curious at what year the code came into place.
New code came into place. It was July of 2021 when that was adopted. I was just actually looking through it here really quick too. So we made some changes back in 2015 that took a required gravel or prohibited gravel parking in some areas of the city. And then we made mention in some other areas of driveways had to be hard surface. I think it was open to interpretation if hard surface meant gravel or not. But then we had made some changes in 2015 that kind of led to us saying, gravel was no longer a hard surface at that point. But yeah, this code that we're going off right now was July of 21. So
Okay. Second point would be in question to the grievance. We don't have an extra 10,000 laying around. I guess that would be the grievance. And then the only other thing I guess I would add to that is would there be a way that this could be not grandfathered in? Could this be a thing where they get an extension where he could maybe have a year, so he could save some money to put something like this into place? Is it something that's gonna stop him from?
yeah, we'd have to talk about that internally. I want to talk to Tim
Right.
with that as well too on the CO, but I mean, we've done things like that before in some other projects where we've given a little bit of an extension.
Sure.
I don't know. if
Just
that-
curious about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we'll definitely talk about that, but we can,
Okay.
depending on what they do here yet tonight.
So it's a good question.
Right.
And I think our heart goes out to you. We understand that
Sure.
how difficult this is. On the other hand, you could see that the law is pretty explicit right now, and there's not much wiggle room in here at all. If we were to, would we have to put this in our motion that we would extend them, offer some sort of an extension as far as the time, or how would we deal with that?
You could, if you wanted to, yeah, otherwise, if you just wanna rely on us to kind of sit down and talk through that, like I said, Tim's not here and I
Sure.
don't know what. He's the building official that has to issue either a CO or a temp CO on that, so it'd be a temp CO that's issued for a length of time. Through there, I would really like to talk to him first, as
course.
he's the one that has to sign that document, so.
So
I
do we
think-
table this?
No.
No, I think we would make the decision, but in good faith, that we're not gonna pull some fast one on you or anything like that. We're all sympathetic to this, and I think that discussion will go on. But also based on Tim's expertise and the general discussion that happens, it's not really at board level, it's more internal, isn't it? Am I right about that, Charlie? Yeah,
Would we be
Yeah.
able to say within the next, 30 days to meet with someone internally or the next
Yeah,
14
well,
days? Or
and like I said,
next 10 days.
we could talk to Tim tomorrow on it and just say, hey, this is kind of what was discussed, what
Mhm.
time frame are we looking at? And, if he's not comfortable with the year, we can talk to you guys and kind of figure out what that time frame would be, so. Thank you.
I know that another thing that I discussed was, we were allowed and permitted not to do the sidewalks right out the gate since that wasn't paved as well. So he went back through my paper. If there was something in the final plat that stated that the paved surfaces didn't need to be met until that road got paved. Is that something that could be taken into consideration? Could I just pave the driveway at the time that that road is paved along with the sidewalks?
So we've got an exception in our ordinance for sidewalks in certain cases. And I'll just give you a really good example here. If you're familiar with Hillcrest Avenue on the north side of town. There's a lot of businesses on the south side of that road that got waivers from sidewalk because there was no curb and gutter there. There was a ditch section there. However, the waivers that they signed say that when the conditions change that granted or that the waiver was granted under, you have to put that in. We're obviously paving Hillcrest right now, so we're kind of going through some of that and how that gets paid for. I won't get too inside baseball on the negotiations that took place on some of that stuff, but we've all got all that figured out. However, for sidewalks on that, we don't for driveways along gravel roads. So that would take some sort of code amendment from the city council to get a process like that in place. Like you said, it can stay a gravel driveway, at which point the city paves the road, then you would be required to pave the road, but we just don't have that process in place right now.
but I think there's a willingness to be flexible about this.
Yeah, I'm obviously, best case scenario for me is you guys granted, but and then I guess the other question, and Tim made a comment on this. He didn't say this explicitly. Is it the entire thing that has to be paved, or is it just the apron in front of the garage where the cars are parked?
Yeah, the entire thing.
Okay. So. I guess that's.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, would we like to make a motion to? Okay, we're looking at the verbiage here, had to, approve the variance.
I move that we deny the variance request.
We can do that. Again, typically it's always in the affirmative, and then if you don't want to approve, you say no. So move what we've done in the past, and this is up to the board. Move to approve. And then a yes vote is to approve, a no vote would be to deny.
So then, can I point out that language would be helpful when it's in the alternatives that are
Yes.
listed there?
Yeah.
So,
I'm basically making my motion based on the language
Yeah.
that's right in front of me, Charlie.
Yep.
So I mean, I want to do this right.
Yeah, no, 100%. You're voting, your motion is to deny, and then
Right.
you're saying yes to deny, and then some people think it's very confusing in that sense. If everybody here understands how that is, but we can do that.
well, why don't we just start this over and say, I would like to make a motion to approve the variance.
And I'll second that.
Okay, then we would like to have a roll call.
Okay, Mitchell,
No.
Solovich,
Now,
Bash.
No. Seems kind of backwards, doesn't it?
Never easy, right?
Yeah,
so we do have an understanding that you'll be getting together and see if we can get this ended for you for a year. So that will be something that you'll be able to do to give yourself some time. Okay. Is there anything else that we would like to address this evening?
Really quick under staff comments, 3 months ago, which I don't know where we're at right now, we reviewed the appeal for the building on the square. You asked us to kind of go back to the board and figure out exactly how we want to handle buildings on the square when it came to sprinkling and all of that. We've had a few internal discussions between Tim, fire chief and I.
One moment, Charlie.
Yeah.
If you guys want to head on out, you certainly can. The rest of
this
us is
is-
just boring for you. So thank
but-
you so much for your
Thank
time.
yes, thank you.
But anyways, what we kind of landed on was rather than, let me go back over what happened on this particular one is we had the rental inspection. The building had some issues with it as far as distances of exit and all of that stuff. Where the building official did not feel comfortable having people living in that just because it was old. If there ever was a fire for whatever reason, especially when you're dealing with commercial business on the bottom, residential on the top, there was just some fear that there was some things that could go wrong there. So the building official requested that the building be sprinklered because we do allow things to be grandfathered in under the building code. However, if there's a matter of life and safety in there, grandfathering does not necessarily apply. So we went through that process. Board of Adjustment said, hey, not sprinkler in this, but we want the city to come back and take a look at this. So what we did is we kind of looked through our existing building code on what does require without that determination there on the life safety portion of the grandfathering, what actually does determine if a building needs to be sprinklered. So when we look at the existing international building code, or excuse me, it's the international existing building code. There's 3 level of alterations that can be done on an existing building. It's level 1, level 2, and level 3. And I'll just read them here really quick. Level 1 alterations include the removal and replacement or the covering of existing materials, elements, equipments, or fixtures using new materials, elements, equipments, and fixtures that serve the same purpose. So that's kind of like facade replacements, exterior replacements, and things like that. Level 2 alterations include the reconfiguration of space, the addition or elimination of any door or window, the reconfiguration or extension of any system, or the installation of any additional equipment. And then level 3 alterations apply where the work area exceeds 50% of the building area. So when you look at the international existing building code, it is very clear that a level 3 alteration does require a building to become up and sprinkler systems would be required. So I think our determination from here on out is if it's a level 3 alteration, for sure, we're looking at sprinkling. However, Tim wanted to make sure that you guys knew this. There are particular instances in level 2 alterations where those could arise as well. And I don't have any examples on that. The only thing I can tell you is when you get into the building code, I mean, this building code right here is very small. The building code that we mainly run off is usually about that thick. There are so many elements to it, so many variables that come into that. I can't give an example right now of something that would require it. But there is a possibility that level 2 alteration could trigger that in the future. So I think our thought is really, as it applies to the square, when we're looking at building sprinkler requirements, if a building owner is doing an alteration, investing the money in there to a point where, there's building permits being applied for and there's a sizable investment going into that property, that's typically when that sprinkler system or the sprinkling enhancements might be required at that point. So I think we're going to go with that one rather than, go and look through buildings and say, hey, we're fearful of the safety of the people in this building for X, Y, and Z problems, so we require a sprinkler system. We'll look at some other alternative methods and make sure that, smoke detectors are in good places and just that notification that we made if there is a vent and maybe some interconnecting of smoke alarms. So if there is a fire on the bottom, the people above are notified of that as well too. So we'll look at some alternatives there. But I think the discussion that we had back in April and kind of the direction that was given by the Board of Adjustment gave us a good starting point to go back and look at that, but that's been our determination.
So that will trigger, if there's some work that's gonna be done to a building anyway, that's gonna be substantial,
Yeah.
that will trigger
Yeah.
our decision that we need to bring that to level 3.
Yeah.
Okay. I can't, it still makes me uncomfortable, but
Yeah,
on
it
the
does.
other hand, I don't want to have a heavy-handed approach to this thing where we go in and enforce that people change all that.
It's striking that fine balance of building and life safety with economics, obviously,
course.
for property owners. So it's never an easy discussion. Yeah, in the perfect world, we'd have every single building in town sprinkled. I mean, we'd have every single family dwelling in town sprinkled, but we just know that that's not feasible, and that's, codes are written in a way to try to find that balance, and that's typically what we do with any code in the city, is to find that balance between property rights and human safety rights, so. So just wanted to give that update to you. Yeah, I think that's all we have. The other thing I guess I would like to do is introduce you to Daniel. And how do you say your last name again?
Benigni.
Benini. Okay, so he is
Say again,
an
Bignini?
yeah,
Okay,
he is our intern for the summer. He comes from BYU out in Provo, Utah. So he's here for the summer interning with us. Just started on Monday and kind of get his feet wet with some public meetings, and hopefully possibly by the end of the year, maybe we'll have him giving some presentations to you on cases just like Emily does usually. So
Great.
welcome,
Wonderful.
welcome.
Welcome.
Good to have you.
Yeah.
other than that, I do not have anything else unless you have questions of us. Great.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
There we go. All in favor?